Forget gurus. Forget anyone claiming to be an online business expert without going through the challenges of entrepreneurship themselves. The Real Money, Real Business podcast is here to prove the best insights in online business comes from your fellow online business builders. We dig into stories of entrepreneurs selling their business on the Empire Flippers marketplace so that you can learn how they made their business profitable, how they overcame obstacles, and what lessons they learned in their online journey. If you want to take your business and your knowledge to the next level, you've come to the right podcast. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Real Money, Real Business podcast. We record these interviews so potential buyers have more information about the seller and the business to help them make a buying decision. Before we dive in, let's go over a brief summary of this business. It's for an Amazon FBA, Amazon FBM, and e-commerce business created in June of 2012 in mixed niches. The average monthly revenue for the business is $312,773 and makes an average of $36,623 per month in net profit. The assets included in the sale are an Amazon Seller Central account with 510 SKUs, Walmart account, Shopify account, primary domain and all site content and files, secondary domain and all site content and files, an email list with about 1 million subscribers, 2 trademarks, Facebook page with over 1,400 subscribers, supplier relationships, and just as a disclaimer, inventory is not normally included in the list price, but further details can be provided to verified buyers. So for everyone listening, you can visit empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing 59330 to learn more about the business, or you can unlock this listing to start your due diligence if you're interested in purchasing this asset. So that's a brief overview of the business for sale. Let's hear from the seller with me today. So welcome to the show, Richard. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Nick. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to learning more about you and your business. So to start us off with the first question, can you tell us a little bit about your background in building and running online businesses?
Yeah, sure. So, I started this business in 2012, and previously I was actually working in corporate America as a certified public accountant, but that was not really something I really found it to be very entrepreneurial. So, on the side, I was researching various opportunities and decided to go into the marketplace, e-commerce in general. So start learning everything from scratch, from importing to how to manage Amazon listings, and then, eventually establish my team in both US and in China. And, as time progresses, and this is where we are.
Very cool. Did you know that the founder of Nike did accounting before he started Nike? And he was talking about how that helped him to build the company that he made today. Just out of curiosity, did you find that your CPA work, your accounting work helped you with this business that you created?
Absolutely nothing, absolutely nothing. But realistically, it does help. Financially, we're a lot more careful. We're a lot more diligent, with how we spend our money, of course, and we're relatively more conservative when it comes to expanding and such. But, it comes with pros and cons.
Cool. Well, I know this is a company or a business with mixed niches. So it's hard to maybe ask about why you chose this niche, but maybe to answer this question, you can tell me about the niches that you chose or how you went about choosing the niches.
Yeah, sure. So we actually I was personally in the beginning very, very go-hung about, finding the newest trendy product. So, I was relatively good at that. And that's how I was able to kind of make this a whole full-time kind of business. But eventually I realized that's not the proper way of kind of running a sustainable business. You get a really good year, you get a really bad year. And then it got a little bit overwhelming when it comes to always chasing the next thing. So, I was able to really kind of, look through the different catalog or the products we have and really settle down on things that's more evergreen. That doesn't really require too much additional maintenance, doesn't require an update every year. So that's how our products are a little bit on different categories, but at the same time, they share the same principle that we don't really need to update it. Or to just give a quick example, even though we're in the apparel side on some of the item, and usually the typical assumption for apparel is that you require an update every year. There's different trend. But what we did was more of the backpack section, which is also in apparel for some reason. But backpacks, we stick with more of the vintage backpack. Now, vintage backpack by nature are vintage. They don't get updated. So that's how things kind of evolved into our current assortment, of these more of an evergreen type of product. And that's how the products were chosen. And partly has to do with the platform as well, because we were the first 100 seller to be invited to the Walmart marketplace. And when Walmart first started, we started learning how to sell on it. We realized it's very different from Amazon. And some of our product assortment were more or less guided by the nature of that marketplace in terms of, what sells there. So a little bit of that too. So obviously a mix of our own personal decision and how the marketplace sort of guided you to the various categories.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point about how for apparel, some business owners might shy away from apparel because they think, as you mentioned, there are trends and apparel might not last for a long time, or I don't know, just different reasons. But the fact that you, even within apparel, your philosophy, I guess, for product selection is that you choose evergreen products regardless of if it's in apparel or in a different category. I think that addresses one of the main pain points for apparel is just not being evergreen. So yeah, I think that's cool that even within that category, you chose carefully, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, the whole broad category of apparel is kind of defined by Amazon, to be honest. Like for the longest time, backpack were in the shoes category for some odd reason. So, apparel is kind of broad, how they classify it usually.
Got it. Okay. Well, as you mentioned, you started this business in 2012. It's been a ride. It's been a journey. So why are you deciding to sell the business now instead of keeping it and growing it further?
Actually, I've always been, very entrepreneurial. And in 2018, I started another business in cannabis accessories. So we started a brand of cannabis accessories line. And, I thought I was able to kind of handle both. But, that side is relatively heavy on the product development side. And so because it's relatively new, so there's a lot of gap in terms of new product that needs to come in. So I just find it very hard to juggle both business and really kind of give it the necessary attention for both. So I figure, given the current environment, the Amazon business, to be honest, is a little bit better when it comes to the whole exit, I suppose, is more mature. There's a little bit more of a defined valuation to it. So I figured that's a better choice for me to focus in the cannabis side, which unfortunately still requires some time before there's some kind of standard valuation for it.
Yep. Maybe a sign of wisdom as an entrepreneur who has, I think by definition, a lot of ideas to know when to focus down into just one thing or just reduce the amount of focus so you can spend more time on that thing. So yeah, definitely understandable. Okay. So it's been several years. I'm sure you've learned a lot throughout the process of building this business, and you've seen quite a degree of success here. So what did you learn from building this business that just seemed to work that you would say contributed to that success?
Well, I think on the overall running the business, we all kind of learned Amazon the similar way, or at least marketplace the similar way. But when it comes to the supply chain side, depending on the type of products that you sell, you may have a very stable supply chain for the time being. But because of our experience in terms of being a little bit more broad in terms of touching the various field, we find that, having a really strong team to support the supply chain is very important. And then another direction to look at it is that to have a really strong China-based operation is also very important, because to be honest, that's where most of the things are made. And you do need a native team there to support that effort. That's really going to cut down your labor costs, is really going to cut down a lot of the barriers or delays that you might encounter. So what we have set up is a small team, very, very small and relatively inexpensive team, where there's a party of two handling all of our purchasing, including the restocking analysis that we do. And in terms of communicating with the factories, and we have a team of two people that handles all the logistics, being that it helps us get everything perfect from the purchasing all the way to the Amazon warehouse directly without, kind of any other complications. So I feel like having a strong support in that field is very important. Of course, then with any other marketplace, it's about product selection. It's about being able to know what value you're bringing to the particular niche. That's also important. But I think some of the area that requires more support is actually from the overseas side. And I feel like we were able to kind of build that foundation.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up as far as something that worked because, yes, business owners, when they see a business with lots of SKUs, in this case, over 500 SKUs, it can be an area of concern because you don't know on the back end what those operations look like. Is a ton of, I don't know, work or moving parts for the buyer. But the implication with being able to have a business with that many SKUs is that there's a supply chain operation that can support that. So yeah, I think that's a very valuable thing that you bring up is that you do have that in place to be able to support that. So of course, throughout the process of building this, there's been something that didn't work out so well. Did you want to bring up anything that you tried that didn't work out?
Yeah, because I've been at it for quite a while. So I have experimented with almost all the marketplaces that I can get my hands on, when it comes to selling. In the beginning, that's what everyone tend to do. But at the same time, I found that stretching yourself a little thin when it comes to expanding to different marketplaces could actually be a little bit detrimental in terms of, you might run into a situation where your item is selling really well on Amazon. You put it on Walmart, you put it on eBay, and you realize they barely make a dent. And then, you still have to put in the manpower to kind of monitor that every once in a while. But it becomes a very bad morale issue where, there's not much going on, but that individual still has to exert the force to monitor. So I think it's important to really understand kind of the personality of that marketplace and what item do tend to sell before we duplicate the listing that we have or the catalog that we have across different marketplaces. I think it's important to expand, but at the same time, a simple duplication could actually cause that you extend your operation a little bit too thin.
You mean simply duplicating what you have on Amazon and just assuming that the exact same thing is going to work on like Walmart, for example?
Walmart could be obviously that's okay. It doesn't really cost much to do it. I'm talking more about let's say, if there is any kind of marketplace that require a little bit more cost or some additional inventory commitment, sometimes that part could cost you time and money. Walmart as a whole has a different customer. For people that sells very well on Amazon that also wants to sell Walmart, I'm completely supportive of that move. But at the same time, I think it's important to analyze a little bit more on the customer base of Walmart. So, for example, if let's say you're selling an item relatively well on Amazon, you move the same item to Walmart, you might want to consider expanding a little bit into a more inexpensive line, for example, of the same product, same category, but you're able to kind of hit a lot broader customer on Walmart and things of that nature. So like different personalities, as long as you are somewhat aware and make some logical choices, is not very difficult. Just be aware that, successful on Amazon sometimes doesn't translate immediately to the same on Walmart.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I think you're seeing a shift now going from businesses that are purely Amazon FBA to wanting to become more omni-channel, direct to consumer, like fulfilling your product by yourself via Shopify, for example, or selling on Walmart. I think it's an important point that you bring up. These channels aren't all the same. They require, at least, as you said, to understand the individuality of each channel and making sure that you're essentially building a business to work within those parameters of that channel. It's a good point. Okay. Well, this business is definitely a larger business. So can you describe the amount and the type of work that you do on this business for maintenance?
It's a little embarrassing, but I really don't spend too much time on this business anymore. A lot of the things that we do is somewhat automated. For example, the big part of our monthly work is to make sure that we have enough inventory in the system. And that calculation is being done by the overseas teams that I have. And the communication, the transportation is done in that sense as well. Now, my role is primarily in dealing with some of the more nuances of the business, like filing taxes, making sure that's good, any kind of regulatory requirement that we may have to be aware of. I'm talking about workers' comp and things like that nature, right? And then that's one thing, just maintaining the business as a whole. I do pay attention to PPC. That's one area that I do still do some hands-on work on to make sure that is within, is coherent, in terms of our strategy. My primary job, I suppose, is maintenance and PPC. That's what my role is in the company.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, that's, I think, pretty standard and maybe even less than expected for a company of business of this size. So nice. It seems like you have your operations working well to support that. Okay. So, next question, let's talk a little bit about how traffic is generated. As I know, this has a few avenues for sales. You talked about Walmart. We have, of course, Amazon FBA. I guess as far as sales channels go, so those have their own traffic sources through PPC. Is there any other way that you drive traffic to these pages?
We do occasionally run some Facebook ads, on a product, usually during the launch of a product. But embarrassing enough, it's been a little while since, we needed to do that because, I think usually what happens now is just to push the PPC at the right time is mainly what we would do. And most of our traffics do come from the organic side. We do strategically over invest into the PPC in the right time. And unlike maybe some other sellers do, we tend to over invest in more mellow seasons. For example, our product has, a little bit larger summer emphasis. So we would actually invest a little bit more on the PPC during the springtime, where A, there's not that much competition for our product type. And then B, we're able to drive up the ranking prior to where the organic things kick in.
Yeah, by the time summer comes up, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Very cool. And then as far as revenue streams, you mentioned there's Amazon FBA, Walmart, and you also do have a Shopify store as well. Is that right?
Yes, but it's primarily Walmart and Amazon.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
And one thing to quick add about that is like our Walmart revenue is not at par with Amazon, not quite there yet, but it's still decently significant. And part of the reason is we do take advantage of a lot of the Walmart's programs relatively early on, such as their WFS program, their advertising program, and their beta team. So we're able to utilize that a little bit earlier. So that allows us to kind of consolidate our ranking per se on Walmart a little bit earlier than other people. So I suppose paying attention to these new opportunities is also an important part of my job, that business development aspect.
Yeah, very cool. So talking about business development, I guess let's go into opportunities for growth then. So if you were to keep the business, what are some ways that you would try to grow it?
I would as much as I don't want to chase a trend, you want the trend, at least the overall trend, to be a little bit more on your side than not. And one of the biggest opportunity that I see right now is to expand from our bags and backpack category, expanding that to more of that travel bag and backpack, given that travel is probably going to be on the full force back, this summer perhaps. I feel like that's a great opportunity to have a little bit of wind behind your back when you launch a little bit more, especially that more of a product assortment, and especially if that comes from the same supply chain that we already have. So that's something that we are working on as of now. And second is actually, launching with Amazon Europe. That's something we have really never done, as, frankly, we just didn't have the extra inventory, or, we're stretched a little thin usually on the capital to be able to expand overseas with that assortment. But, it's always been kind of a missed opportunity because, as a lot of people know, Europe does consolidate US's review counts. So you're basically starting off the listing with existing review. That's half the work already done for you. So we were to continue with the business, those are the two areas that I think is the lowest hanging fruit.
Got it. And just you kind of cut off with right when you said launching in Amazon. Did you say Amazon EU? Is that what you had said?
Yeah, Europe. Yeah,
okay,
EU.
Got it. That sounds great. So of course, with opportunities for growth, there are also risks that come with growing any business. So what do you think are the biggest risks with this business that a buyer should be aware of?
With any Amazon accounts or Walmart account, I guess the largest risk has always been, account suspension. People worry about that. The fortunate part is because this account has been around for so long, and Walmart account, like I was saying, is the first 100 seller on their platform. So really good standing. We don't ever do that kind of gray area type of operation. So there's really no risk there. If there's really more of a secondary risk, it's definitely on the expense side. Obviously you want to watch your PPC because those could kind of out of hand relatively quicker. And, because our product are there's some seasonality. We have a balance of winter and summer item, but just to make sure that we do make that switch on the PPC investment at the right time. Making sure we don't overinvest into PPC on the summer items during Christmas, for example. That's a little too early. We're doing in spring, but don't need to do it in Christmas.
Got it. So the proper timing of investing in PPC. Okay. That sounds great. And yeah, in regards to the first point that you brought up with account suspension and all that, any Amazon seller is quite familiar with the potential for that, just having to adhere very strictly to Amazon's terms of service. But the point that you bring up, you have a well-aged account. It's 10 years old, if not older. So yeah, that's a very good sign that your account is in great standing. Okay, so some final questions, housekeeping questions to wrap this up. How much support are you willing to offer buyers?
I'm willing to provide up to 60 days or whatever the standard is, and a little bit more, of course. I'm very much willing to make sure that, I'm not just selling the business. Instead, I'm putting the account in good hands to somebody. And I'm willing to make that transition as easy as possible and willing to, offer the support as needed for that transition.
Perfect. And would you commit to a non-compete?
Yes.
Okay. And are you open to something like an earnout?
My preference is not having it, but I'm open to that option.
Okay. Yeah, preference for cash up front, but at least open to having that discussion for an earnout. Okay, perfect. And last two questions. Putting yourself in the shoes of a buyer, why do you think this is a business worth buying?
I guess starting from what we have already mentioned a little bit in the previous part of the interview, I guess the maturity of that supply chain that we have, the native supply chain infrastructure that we have overseas, I think that's really going to help, especially in light of kind of the confusion that's really happening in the marketplace right now. I think having that support is very important to us. Adding 100 more SKUs or 200 more SKU does not really cause any issue with our infrastructure. And I think having that as part of the buyer's infrastructure should help most of the business. And secondly is that, as we mentioned previously, the account is relatively older and it's in good standing. So having that peace of mind of security in terms of, you're not going to get an account that's going to have a problem is also very important. That doesn't have any kind of history. And I think when an account is old enough, it gets put into a different bracket where you just offer additional security layers. I think that is also very important. It's also important that we're not selling product that, there are a lot of sellers that's very successful that does very well in 1 or 2 years that kind of was able to push a product out, make it successful. And there's, a lot of respect for those people. But nevertheless, our products is been there for a while. And so its standing are not really as fluctuating. So I think it's important to have product with a standing that has been aged as well. And this way, there's a little bit less downward pressure if something goes wrong. And there's, upward pressure is the same with every listing. So I think having that is also an advantage. You have a, very relatively safe foundation to build on where you can expand on. And, hopefully there are business out there that has a lot more products and a lot more, ideas. And then I think that's going to be a good fusion with what we have.
Yeah, that's a good combination that you bring up. One being the supply chain operations in place should a buyer want to scale or just want to make sure that they're protected almost from the current supply chain issues. And then second is having this account and these products that are well aged and will have already shown proof of selling, like a strong history of selling, and should very likely continue to sell into the future. So yeah, I think those are two good points that you bring up in combination.
Thank you. Allow me to expand on that last part a little bit one more time. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Yeah. So like I was saying, in terms of the age account, part of that is the Walmart account. So, as we were saying, Walmart is a relatively larger part of our business. So for any seller that wish to expand on that platform, I think our account serves as a good template where most of the item is, we use all of the service that they have. And then we kind of figured out how to sell well on there. So I think for any of the seller with that intention, I think our account does serve as a good template for that expansion.
Yeah, good point, both for Amazon and for Walmart. Okay. Well, last question. Is there anything you'd like to add that you think I might have missed during the interview? I know we covered a lot.
No, I think I'm good. I think I just added something. So that will be at my ad.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot, definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to wrap this up here. Richard, thank you so much for sharing your story and joining us on today's episode. And yeah, I hope your business is purchased in the near future and by the right buyer.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you, Nick.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. To learn more and see if this listing has already been sold, head over to empireflippers.com/marketplace and search for listing number 59330. And if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go straight to the listing. And once you've unlocked this listing, you'll be given everything you need to know about this business. So until next time, enjoy your digital journey.